Well, hello, this is Curt Pringle. Glad you're able to tune in to Talking Issues, a podcast we're doing to talk about public policy issues in California that affect, Southern California and Orange County particularly. But, I was thinking who I could get to share with you today about Orange County history, business perspective, small business perspective that maybe many of you know. And in Southern California, I don't know if the general public knows how many restaurants, fast food chains particularly, have their start in Southern California, from McDonald's in San Bernardino or Carl's Jr. here in Anaheim. In-N-Out Burger, of course, with its home here. Taco Bell now has its permanent home in Orange County, even though it was started in Los Angeles County. And there are so many, one right after another, right after another. You need to look it up because this is the home of fast food, and probably the most iconic fast food restaurant from Orange County particularly is Wahoo's Fish Tacos. And today we have one of the preeminent owners of Wahoo's, Wing Lam. Thanks for being here, Wing.
Thanks, Kurt. It's always fun to be here.
Yeah, a lot of people know of Wahoo's. You have over 50 locations now, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Sure.
Talking about how your family got to Orange County, I think that's really special. And what led you and your brothers to start a fish taco place?
Yeah. Well, I think if you go back to, I call Americana around the world, everybody is, like there's a magnet about Southern California because you got Hollywood and Disneyland here. So everybody, no matter where you are, by the way, from around the world,
Yeah.
everybody thinks that the ocean is in your front yard and Disneyland is behind you,
Right.
which is, that's not the case.
Well, it
right?
is behind us here.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Well,
Well, yeah, but it's not like you can walk over there, right?
Right.
So whenever people come and visit people from California, they're like, hey, can you take me to Disneyland? And depending on where you are in Southern California, it could be 20 minutes or it could be an hour and a half.
Right.
So and same with Hollywood. They also think Hollywood is on the other side of the block, right? So my parents, at least my dad in the mid 60s, decided that he wanted, another opportunity because he was not, satisfied with where we were in Brazil, and we did really well. So we had our own restaurant in Brazil, did very well, but he just said there's maybe something better, right? So he comes with my older brother in the late 60s, and somehow they ended up finding a Mexican restaurant for sale on Balboa Island. And my dad decides, hey, we should do a Chinese restaurant here on Balboa Island.
Yes.
Well, great idea.
So
on paper.
Chinese from Brazil coming to Balboa
To Balboa Island.
Chinese
And
restaurant.
remember,
That's awesome. That's
in
easy. Everybody does that.
And in the 60s, there was no Asian kids outside of LA.
Right.
So you're talking Newport Beach, there were no Asian families. So my dad opens the restaurant, and they're literally putt-putting around. And it was a great idea, but people don't believe this is good Chinese food. They're still going to Chinatown, and the business is not doing well, except for one little incident. Gloria Ziegner, who was then, a big socialite publicist, was Pilar Wayne's publicist. So for her husband's birthday, she said, hey, can we do the restaurant? I was, sure, take over the restaurant. She asked Pilar, it'd be great.
Of course, her husband being John Wayne.
John Wayne,
Yes.
if you could stop by and wish my husband a happy birthday.
Yes.
So sure enough, John Wayne comes by the restaurant, takes a picture with my dad, with Gloria, and then, Gloria's husband. And the story and legend that came out of that
Yes.
was that my dad hosted John Wayne's birthday. So for the record, it was Gloria Ziegner's husband, not John Wayne. But the rest is history.
Right.
The restaurant went from about a 20% occupancy to an hour wait to get in for dinner, like in months.
That's
So
crazy.
all of a sudden, my dad calls and say, hey, I need some free labor, right? So it took a little bit of time for us to get our paperwork because immigration is not that easy. So this happens around 1971, 1972. It took us until 1975 for us to finally get all our paperwork ready. And by then, literally, my dad goes, you guys got to get over here because I need all the kids to come to work at the restaurant.
So you had 2 or 3 siblings still in Brazil? Is that
There were 4 of us in Brazil, and then
Same.
one older one here going to school.
right?
And by this time, my older brother got married. He has a kid, and we all get here in literally January of 1975, and jump right into the restaurant as busboys, dishwashers, whatever they needed help with on the weekends. So we would go to school Monday through Friday, and we were laughing because we were the only Chinese family pretty much into high school.
Right.
So
No, I mean that is just the not only classic American story,
yeah,
but a classic Southern California
yeah,
story, isn't it? And with that, you were telling me you got to know the John Wayne family,
yep,
and you stay in contact with
yep.
them and such. And
Yeah, so over the years, Ethan and Wayne became friends because at one point we're bidding to be in the airport, which didn't work out, but I
yes,
think we're going back in. And then
meaning Wahoo's at John Wayne Airport. Yes.
John Wayne
Exactly.
Airport. And then along the way, Mark Ziegner, Gloria Sen, and I become really good friends. His wife, Susie. It's like we all hang out now and we all laugh because it took this little incident in the early 70s that we had nothing to do with it. But now we're all friends going forward.
Right, great.
And more important, so when the opportunity came for when my dad would retire in 1988, he had asked us, the kids, he goes, what do you guys want to do? You guys want to take over the restaurant? And we all looked at it. He goes, well, no, but we have another idea.
Right.
So my kid brother, Ed, was graduating from college that summer. He goes, why don't we do something that we want to do, like more along the lines of surfing?
Yes.
So we said, fish tacos.
Right.
And everybody goes, well, first of all, do you guys realize that you're Chinese? And we all looked at it and goes, yes, but we're from Brazil, so we think we can pull this thing off. So we did. We kind of blended our Brazilian background with the Mexican, a little bit of the Asian. And Wahoo's Fish Talk was born in the
Right.
fall of 88.
And your first restaurant opened in '88.
Yeah, in November of 88 in
Right.
Costa Mesa.
So tell me what is the secret sauce to Wahoo's? I mean, what is special that makes it the freshness of the fish, the way you cook up the fish for your tacos, but what I mean, it's a simple
It's
dish,
simple.
but it is iconic.
Well, I think what happened was back in the day, most restaurants, when they say fish tacos,
Right.
they tend to be deep fried,
Right.
or they tend to be, I call the trimmings of the fish, because you don't want to spend a lot of money serving fish tacos, with the prime pieces of the swordfish or the halibut and all that.
Right.
So that's in the old days. And a lot of how it was, born in Mexico was all I call it the accidental catch. So like sharks, things that you couldn't necessarily sell. But once you filleted it and battered it, they all taste about the same. And especially when you can't see the real fish, I
Right,
call it,
right.
right?
Yes.
So, and then again, cods, all the things that are not like really expensive and really, I guess, expensive that you can sell in a really nice dish. So that's what fish tacos are made out of. Stews, a lot of stuff that you see like bouillabaisse, all that stuff. It's like kind of like I call the trimmings, right?
Right.
Which is nothing wrong with it. It's just not the pretty part of the fish.
Right.
Right. So that's the original. And we went out and said, well, let's use like really good fish and grill it, not fry it. It's going to be a little bit more healthy. So we were kind of at the forefront where our original menus has the calories, percentage, carb, fat, all that, before it was mandated by anybody.
Right.
So we're always on that end. But I think that was just, I call it one part of it. The community involvement is what really separates us from the rest, is that we very, very aggressively went after all of our friends that were in the nonprofit world, like our high school coaches, our teachers, say, hey, how can we help? And they all looked at us, what do you mean? I goes, well, we're in the business here, and I understand that, I played water polo. Because we always have fundraisers during the year for, equipment, whatever it is that we need to do. So let me help you guys out.
Did
And
I
then-
read somewhere that you had a food truck,
We have food trucks still, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That goes out and
We do
provides
all that,
support
yeah,
for
yeah.
nonprofits
Yes.
and things like that. And see, I do believe, talking to different business people over the years, it's wonderful when you're successful and you're economically successful, but the definition of success goes beyond that.
Yeah.
In terms of what do you give back? How
Yeah.
do you connect with the community? How do you use the gift you received in the success
Yep.
to further amplify the benefit to the community through your philanthropy? And
Yeah.
you certainly are someone like that really demonstrates that in
Yeah,
so many
no.
ways.
Well,
So so you have the Wahoo started in Costa Mesa.
Yep.
How hard is it to run a restaurant? Right now you told me a few
About
over
52, yeah.
50.
52, yeah.
What are the challenges today in running a small business, particularly a restaurant?
Especially with what I call it, all the government intervention, whether they mean it or not. You should, look at it from a business perspective as opposed to just policy, right? Because does it make sense for you to pass a bill if you've never had that kind of business. Because if you, like, say, ever owned a restaurant, you find out that, hey, for most people, it's a transitional job. It's not going to be your end all. And again, not everybody, but a certain amount of the people will stay. But 90%, it's a transitional until they get out of college and they go into a career of their own.
They learn
So
how to work,
you get
and then they
exactly.
go for their career.
So in applying all these, wage, for instance, is all these, parameters. All it does is it starts setting a stage for, like we see what happened to the auto industry, automation. Because does it make sense to pay somebody a huge wage to do something that a machine could do really easily? And that's why companies like Amazon and places like that, I mean, their warehouses are fully automated. There's nobody there picking the product as to ship.
Yeah.
It's all done through computer and codes and all that. So pretty soon you're going to see a lot more of, the food industry being automated in different ways to offset the labor costs.
Right. Talking about a workforce, I think it's really, really important. We're a few blocks here from Disneyland.
Oh yeah.
And, I certainly see a shift in the folks who look at Disney as a place to work. And historically, when I was growing up in Garden Grove and my wife in Anaheim, you had such a strong summer labor market or holiday market
Yes.
where the kids and the high school kids, and see, I think that also creates that connectivity
Yes.
with the big business and their community when a lot of people within that community work there or
Yes.
have worked there or tell the stories
Yes.
of working in a fast
Yes.
food restaurant or working for Wahoo's, then you have a unique place
Yes.
with that person going forward.
Yeah. And it is, like I said, a lot of people enjoyed their time there. And then certain people decided to make a career out of it.
Right.
But again, you got to look at the model, right? Does it make sense to pay somebody that's sweeping the streets $30 an hour?
Right.
Even though they've done that job for 10 years, yes, you got to give them the cost of living increase, all that. But after a while, you look at it and go, gee, does it make sense?
Yeah, I had this in my first legislative office. I had a really hardworking person. She was fantastic, and she came in and asked for a raise one day, and I said, "You are worth that,
Yeah,
but the job you're doing isn't."
exactly.
And it's sometimes difficult
Yes.
to tell people. I mean, I grew up in a small business. My dad's dry cleaning business
Yeah,
and drapery
there you go.
business. I know that there's value to an individual, which
Yes.
is awesome, and
Yeah.
then there's also value to what that individual provides in the workplace.
Exactly. So if you can say, okay, I don't mind giving you more, but I'm going to have to give you more duties.
Right.
Right? Because it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
And that's what you got to do. It's like a dishwasher today. I mean, literally is in less than 3 years, the cost of a dishwasher has doubled.
Right. So
Because-
tell me what those numbers are.
Well, for
So
instance,
right now, what is the dishwasher you pay?
dishwasher
Don't
today.
don't share too many companies.
Yeah,
secrets,
okay. But basically, it's hard to get a dishwasher for less than $20 an hour.
Right.
Because there's so many easier jobs offering the same pay.
Sure. Right. And 3 or 4 years ago, it was
$11 an hour.
Yeah.
And people will be fighting to get that job.
Right. And part of the challenge is the labor market is strange. In fact, the labor market is such a low unemployment rate, but
Yep.
also a very low participation rate. So
Yes.
there's a lot of people that historically have worked that aren't working now. So you have few people in that job market. And do you see that improving or?
No, because what happens is this generation that's coming through, they are so used to talking to each other via text, not physically. And they don't even like to talk to each other via the phone. They just want to text each other.
Right.
Because I know that there's a sense of privacy or whatever it is, but they don't want to physically talk like
Right.
physically. I just whether it's phone or person, right? So imagine dealing with customers. They much rather work in a warehouse or work in some IT support. They just want to be in the back
Or
Don't
work
bother-
at home
At home.
and be able to do stuff online.
Yes, so they don't want to interact with the general population. So it's become really, really hard to find people that want to engage as opposed to just get paid to do something and don't bother me while I'm
You
doing
think
it.
it's all based upon the wage rate? Is that the only way to change that?
It's not just the wages, it's the fact that if you banned the usage of cell phones in general at the workplace.
Right.
Because I don't care how good of an employee is, I guarantee if you looked at their call log through the day,
Yeah.
X percentage of it is going to be personal
Let me
stuff.
look at the two guys here from my office. No, neither one of them have their cell phone now, but I'm going to keep an eye for
But
the
that's
whole.
okay. I mean,
Not necessarily.
yeah. But back in the day, the only way you could communicate with somebody during
Right.
your work hours is they called your work phone.
Right.
But now-
on a payphone at the corner of the building. Yes,
Right,
exactly.
right.
So
So, and it is okay, but again, when did the personal and the work blend, right? And you talked about productivity as a role. It's hard because you can't stop people from engaging, and even at school, they're texting
Right.
each other. I mean, so the instant gratification and communication, that's what happens. So the idea that I'm going to retire in 30 years, they want retirement tomorrow. So that's what causes
Yeah.
this whole, and all you got to do right now is talk to any graduating class from college. 30 years ago, everybody talked about getting to training at an IBM, a Xerox, or a Ford, whatever, and then going out and possibly starting their new company. Today, 99% are all about startups because they have nothing to risk or lose. So they're like, let me go all in. And if it works, I'm the next, whatever. If it doesn't work,
Wing Lam.
yeah, if it
Yes.
doesn't work, I'll be getting an office job and, do what I need to do to
Right.
survive.
Yeah, interesting. So when it comes to a job, though, and understanding your industry,
Yeah.
you worked at every station within a restaurant.
Yes, I've done, I paid my dues more than once at my dad's restaurant, at neighbor's restaurant. So I learned the ins and outs. And, and so I call it, basically how the inside of a restaurant runs.
Yeah.
But owning it is a whole complete different animal because there's this thing called payroll on Fridays that I didn't have to worry before.
Right.
So then the finances and all that come into play.
See, I do like talk to people who grew up in their dad's business. And as I mentioned, we moved to California in 1968 because my dad was in the dry cleaning business and we owned dry cleaners.
Yeah.
And I can press your pants right now. I know exactly how to do all of those things.
I love it.
And but it also taught the work ethic, right?
Yes.
Not only the value. And my wife has talked to me about this. She said, you aren't afraid of taking risks, because we as a family sat around a dining room table on a couple of occasions when my dad was talking about, we might go bankrupt, we might lose it. These are I'm really nervous about this. So we talked about that family impact, those challenges. And all of a sudden then it became real that if these guys don't pay their bill by this day, this could happen to our family. And I'm sure you live those same type of discussions around the table, even though you didn't sit around the table for dinner because you're serving food, right?
Yes.
And serving food to others.
The interesting, I think the first major one was, and I want to say in the early 90s, there was a fire in Laguna Canyon, and then the rains came
Right.
the following season.
Right.
And because there was nothing holding the water, you had all the mudslides in the canyon. So you couldn't get to our Laguna Beach store. So between the fires in one season and the rain on the other, there was a gap in which nobody could get to the restaurant to work. So when that happens,
Or to eat.
or to eat,
Yes.
both of them in
Yeah,
that case,
exactly.
we're like, how are we going to make payroll on Friday? Because those 1 or 2 or 3 days of no business makes a huge impact on your cash flow.
Right.
And that's when we learned we're going to have to start putting some funds aside for a rainy day.
Literally.
And, literally.
Right,
And
yes.
we've had multiple of those since.
Right.
Because 9/11, I mean, there's been a few incidents were completely out of our control.
Yeah, well, let's talk about COVID and how that affected, the restaurant business and people in general, and how people look at, how they act differently today than they did prior March of 2020. So how did it affect your business?
Well, again, so we were all kind of giggling, I think, in California because it's like, it's in New York, it's San Francisco. It's never going to happen to us in Southern California because look at our weather, blah blah blah. And I think Florida and us were kind of saying the same thing. Because hey, it's in those parts of the country, and it'll never affect us.
Right.
And as Europe is beginning to shut down, we're like, what are they talking about, right? So when the governor on Wednesday made the announcement that all non-essential was going to be shut down. And then after they said that statement, They said, oh, but not restaurants and not these kinds of, but it was too late because the headline basically said, I think supermarkets and gas stations and everything else, forget it. We're not going to stay open, right? So even though the rest of us are on the second level, people didn't read below the headline.
Right.
So
They're not
Wednesday,
leaving their house. I mean,
they're not leaving their house. If you don't have to go, so you literally saw the freeways. Like I could go on a Friday afternoon then in 2020 from Orange County to USC in 30 minutes
crazy.
at 5 o'clock on a Friday
See,
afternoon.
I don't know if that ever happens again. And we could, I guess, hope to God it never happens again. But there is a place right over here on the 5 freeway
Yeah.
where it happened during the pandemic. Someone did donuts
Yeah.
in the middle of the freeway,
yeah.
and those tire
Yeah.
spin out is
Yeah.
still there. It's kind of it's the marker for me as I pass. Thank God that we're not in a pandemic anymore, and hope we never will be.
Yes.
Because that kind of is the remembrance of nobody on that freeway.
Nobody on the freeway.
Yeah.
And so I remember because I was driving all over. So from Wednesday when the announcement was made, in 2 days by Friday, it was like a ghost town for every business other than a supermarket or a gas station.
Right.
So we lost 85% of our business. So that Friday we started literally packing all the employees furlough because remember then, this is going to last a couple of weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Flatten that curve, whatever that was.
So we said, okay, everybody take rice, beans, oranges, toilet paper, whatever you need, we have, take it with you. But we still had a lot of food that was going to go bad because it was already prepped. So I said to my brothers, hey, why don't I take this to the hospitals? Because we're going to waste it anyway. So after making 4 deliveries to Long Beach Memorial, because it was halfway between us, right? Orange County and LA. I said, Long Beach is a good spot. And I knew the nurses there. So I'm like, okay, this will be easy. And 2 things happened. I get a phone call from my brother that said, hey, this is wonderful that you're doing this and repurposing things.
Feeding the workers.
But we're out of money. So let me remind you, if you want to keep doing this, great, you need to find funds for it.
Right.
And we're going to lose, not only do we already shut down our LA stores, we lost all of them except for the Torrance. We're getting ready to shut down 5 more in Orange County. I'm like, so what do we need to do? He goes, we need to average another $500 a week per location to keep them from literally going upside down. Because remember, the PPE, all that money wasn't coming in yet. Right? So I'm like, okay. So I got one mandate from one side, and then my friend Wendy from KLOS, because remember, everyone got furloughed, she calls me and goes, Wendy, what are you doing? I goes, this is what I'm doing. I'm going out to the hospital. Goes, well, how can we use KLOS as a way to partner with you? I goes, I need funds. He goes, let me get Heidi and Frank to start telling the listeners to donate money, but we can't say to Wahoos. So we need to come up with a name. So she came up with the California Love Drop, and we're a 501.
You can see that right there.
You can see it. Yeah. And then I said, great. So she spearheaded that. And then starting on Fridays, Heidi and Frank would say, hey, by the way, listeners, if you donate some money, we'll send you a limited edition Heidi and Frank Wahoo's California Love Drop mask. And all of a sudden, we started getting money. And then all the local nonprofits started saying, well, you know what? We're all shut down. I go, can I have some of that money back too? Right. So I took a few thousand, and then all of a sudden we started getting momentum. And then my buddy Charles calls me because he was going to my restaurant. He goes, how come the hours are different? I go, so it's because we're barely open.
Right.
And I said, and by the way, Charles, what are you doing? And he goes, what do you mean? What am I doing? He goes, what are you doing? Can you want to come out with us? He goes, are you out of your mind? There's this thing called shelter in place. He goes, I know, but you got to come and see what we're doing.
But you're essential.
Yeah, I'm essential. So out of the blue, I convinced Charles to come to Mission Hospital. He kind of stayed back a little bit. And then next thing we do is Hogue. He's still a little bit like this is shell shocked.
And you're providing food to the nurses and doctors and staff at the hospital.
That are working the doubles and triples. Yes. And then I take him over to Chalk. And the nurses come out that took care of Charles's kids that were premature. And the light bulb went on. And he goes, oh my God, I get to thank the people that saved my kids.
Right.
And all of a sudden, game on. Yeah. Everybody started jumping in. So it was myself, KLOS, Yogurtland, Antis Roofing, Monster Energy Drink, Cliff Bar, and Hint Water. So we had all the stuff. And then I remembered, it goes, oh my God, the U.S. Open of Surfing is going to get canceled. So I called Vans and I says, what are you doing with all the promo stuff that you have for the summer? He goes, we're canceling it. I goes, it's sitting in our warehouse. I'm like, hand it over. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, I want the trucker hats. I want the bandanas. What are you going to do with it? We're going to go out and give them to the nurses. So I had truckloads full of goodies, and the machine just started, right?
That's great. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It really does show. I mean, I think during the pandemic, a lot of people. I remember in one restaurant, I heard one server say, as they start to open things up, "Oh boy, this was a great time. I got to read books. I got to hike."
Yeah.
Around here, and a lot of businesses, you had to hustle and work much harder just to keep everything together. But I think it did change everybody and impact everybody in different ways. You know, and in looking at that, what business changes have you made, or do you think are going to be permanent because of the pandemic?
I think right now, based on what I just been talking to, like landlords and people in offices,
Yes.
the new workforce model. I think the new work week is 4 or maybe 3 days a week in person, and 1 or 2 days off. And I think what they made though is they made it so you can't have Mondays or Fridays. So if you're going to take a day or two off, it's got to be during the middle of the week, so you don't end up with a 4 or 5 day weekend, right? So I think that's kind of be the new normal. So if you look at the old model, where pretty much everybody in my category was lunch heavy, so you have 100% being 5 days. If you go to 4, that's a 20% haircut.
Right.
If you go to 3, that's a 40% haircut.
Right.
So the pie has really shrunken for
If
lunch.
you have established your restaurant for that daytime business, and those people aren't in those offices daytime. I was with the mayor of Sacramento the end of last year, who's a friend of mine, Daryl Steinberg.
Yeah.
And he was telling me he was really excited that the state workers in a lot of the state offices, which are predominantly in Sacramento proper, he said they now are required to go back in the office 3 days a week. But your point is that's a 40% reduction in the workforce for those 2 days they're not there.
Yes.
That the restaurants and other retail and other businesses had planned on.
Yeah.
And that is a shift, I think, where there's predominant workforce coming daytime activity, and all of a sudden they're not necessarily being in the office for that full 5 days, let alone possibly only 3.
Yeah. So the other thing you got to look at is 2 days less a week having put on a suit and tie, right?
Right.
What do you think the dry cleaning
business? Oh, I know.
Right?
Or the tie business.
The tie business.
So,
Right?
they don't have a tie on now. Sorry, I apologize for not having a tie for you.
Everything became, so basically I called the elastic pants became the new fashion statement.
Right, exactly.
And literally today, I mean, you can go to a lot of schools and the kids go to school in pajamas.
Well, we got to change that.
Right, but that's a little, but literally like at the airport, you see families traveling with a pillow in pajamas. I'm like, really? Can you at least put on some clothes?
Right, exactly.
But this became, so everybody's kind of taking it a little farther, right?
Yep.
And the locations that benefited, for instance, if you're on the beach or near some kind of an activity, technically you could be working while you're at the beach. So nobody says where you can work from, home from, right?
Yes, right.
So our locations along the beach, like Huntington Beach, San Clemente, flourished during the pandemic for one reason. People didn't have to go to their offices. They could literally go to the beach and do their work.
Right. But you also lost some stores or restaurants during the pandemic that may not open again.
They will not. I mean, like the campus locations are not going to reopen.
So campus. So you're on a couple of the big universities.
We were at UCI, UC Santa Barbara. They're not coming back. The one in Philadelphia is gone because of that. Even though it wasn't on campus, they were 90% of the customer base was the students and the faculty.
Right.
And right
so that
now
you can't be dead for 2 years with virtually nobody coming and keep the restaurant alive.
Yes, nobody to feed.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the dilemma. And again, the other side is who knew that a drive-through would become that important.
Right.
So any business, whether it was a hamburger or a coffee, if you didn't have a drive-through, I mean, but if you did, your business was up 200 to 300%.
So what's the future of Wahoo's?
Right now, we gotta, remember that, hey, as the offices, we have to adjust to that 30 to 40% less workforce going to a physical office and figure out how to balance it with more evening business. Again, remember, families have a lot more options at night.
Right.
And then also, we'll do what I've been doing with the California Love Drop is find ways to deliver the product.
Yeah. You really are an inspiration, your family coming here and establishing such a great business, but more importantly, using that success to help others. So,
Yes.
hey, I'm glad you're my friend, and I want to thank you for coming and sharing a few thoughts today.
Anytime.
Thanks,
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.